Welcome to yet another knowledge clip of Global School for Entrepreneurship. This time it's about brilliance of failure. It's all about accepting failure because it's a way to achieve your goal. When you rise, things are not going to work out as you had intended. You will have to deal with surprises, good and bad. Brilliance of failure is a module that after having done a lot, you've already learned that there's a lot of failure. And with the Brilliance of Failure module, we teach you how to recognize failure and how to recognize the archetypes that are being taught by Paul Iske. Paul Iske is the founder of the Institute of Brilliant Failures and a professor that teaches about failure by the means of archetypes. If you look at these archetypes, I like this one, for instance, which is called the Bridge of Honduras. It's an archetype for a phenomenon that happens a lot with entrepreneurs. They build and keep building and keep building and keep building, and they don't bring their product to the market because they keep adding features, optimizing, because they're afraid that the market's not going to like their product. And then they keep optimizing. At the end, they bring it to the market and they find out that there is no customers for it. What we teach our students is to really make sure that you get feedback from the market fast. That's also why our first module in our program is actually agile working, because it really shows that you need to do sprints and iterate fast based upon feedback. This whole story of the Bridge of Honduras is, by the way, also very interesting because it's an actual story. It's a bridge that was built to withstand hurricanes. And at the end, the bridge was finally built. The hurricane came. Everything around it was completely... It was a disaster. Everything disappeared. The bridge stood steady, but at the end, it had no more function because the river had changed its course, and therefore the bridge was no longer going over the river. But it's an archetype for entrepreneurs postponing the launching of their product towards the market and putting too much money in the initial development and then finding out that there is no business. That's something you want to prevent. Another one is a black swan. This one's different. This is, for instance, COVID. No one sees it coming, but it has massive impact on your business. Something that you could not imagine to be true. And then it happens, and then it has consequences. Now, if you look at the canyon, this is, of course, complete opposite. The canyon stands for continuing what you've always done and expecting the same result. So you keep doing it in the same way, even though you should change it and do it in another way. But a lot of failure can be explained because companies or teams keep doing what they've always done. And then at the end, it doesn't work. If you look at education, a lot of big universities, generic universities, get a lot of subsidy and they put people in big lecture halls, getting educated hundreds at the same time. And it's only the professor that's sending information. And then there is these knowledge quizzes at the end of half a year, and then you don't learn anything because after a month of studying, then you do the exam, and then a month later, you forgot all about it. So it's not really good education. If you look at what we're doing at Global School, it is that we really facilitate you by applying and doing and learning by doing. And therefore, if you look, for instance, at the module of branding, you build a brand book for your business. That's something, that's an experience that you have that you will not soon forget. And it's that way of educating. So we're getting out of the canyon of regular education, and we are a university. We do things differently. So we deliberately got out of the education canyon and do it our own way. Now, the diver of Acapulco is a very interesting one. You probably know this, right? A diver on the top of a cliff getting ready to dive and jump down the cliff, but there's waves underneath. And sometimes the waves are there and then the wave is back in the ocean, then it comes back and forth. And you have to time it right because if you don't time it right, you smack your face on the stones, right? On the rocks. But if you time it right, you can dive in the water. That's the diver of Acapulco. You know these divers, right? And this is an analogy to getting the timing right in the market. When I started with entrepreneurship education, I was way too early. They even called corporate entrepreneurship a contradictie in termini, which means that there's no such thing. It's two opposites combined in one word, corporate and entrepreneurship. And now all the corporates are doing entrepreneurship. But I've been in this field since 2005, 2006. And at that time, big corporates were not bothered with startups or internal venturing. They were trying to build massive machines and do high production and mass production. And now they need to figure out new value propositions. And now you see them do a lot of entrepreneurship. So I was ahead of the time and I did not time my market correctly. So the diver of Acapulco also at that instant told me that I did not have the timing right. So some of my initiatives in 2005 till 2009 failed because I was too ahead of the market. I could not sell because the buyers were not aware that it was valuable. Then another one is the empty spot at the table. And this is when the team is missing the insights from an important stakeholder. Sometimes you miss part of the knowledge because someone's missing. A lot of startup teams, for instance, that have a technology base, someone with coding skills and they miss a coder or a technical co-founder. Then the investors are not willing to invest because there's an empty spot at the table. There's someone missing in the team. And because of that, you have to continuously hire other coders. And sometimes it takes you a lot longer. Then another one of Paul Iske's archetypes is the farmer's daughter. You look for a needle in a haystack and you come out with a farmer's daughter. I always find it funny because when Paul Iske talks about this, he always has to laugh a little bit about the fact that that it's also a tongue-in-cheek, right? It's the farmer's daughter. But it's going in to create one thing and then coming out with an insight that is a super opportunity so that you can create something valuable. It's also sometimes described as serendipity. So the farmer's daughter is an archetype for going in, failing, but coming out with a better insight and a better opportunity. Now, a general without an army is also a failure archetype because you as an entrepreneur try to achieve something, but you lack means. We talk about effectuation a lot in Global School, and effectuation, one of the principles is the bird in hand principle. And you actually miss out on means. So you have a too small a bird in hand. You miss out on people or knowledge or market insight, capabilities, whatever. It's missing means. And therefore, you cannot be successful in the market. Another one is the junkie. The junkie is the entrepreneur that just keeps going, scores really high on perseverance and drive and ambition, but he keeps going even though there is no actual business. But at the end of the day, he did not validate it with the customer and there is no market. Now, the most generic one in Paul Iske's archetypes is the light bulb. The light bulb is just a simple light bulb going on. So it's a major insight that's leading towards a new product or a new service, a new course of action. So it's an insight. You could almost see it as the farmer's daughter. They're quite related. But it's a really a light bulb moment that happens in a process. But the difference between the farmer's daughter, where it's a deliberate search, and this one is that it is an instant in the process without it being planned. Now, the right brain half is also very interesting. You see this a lot with people that are coders, really logical, rational thinkers that create a process, and then the users are more using it more emotionally, so more in a creative manner. They want to have a great experience, the user experience, and not as it was planned by the coder. Often this brings in a whole lot of problems. And from my perspective, it's always the customer that's right. So if the customer is not being served and doesn't understand the relevance or how the system should be used, then the system was not designed correctly. And that's the right brain half. Now, the skin of the bear is something, especially with opportunistic entrepreneurs. This is the archetype that's all about assuming that sales will come. Could be that you're already investing in something and that you think, well, yeah, but it will be sold. And you go into certain agreements that at the end of the day sinks your ship because you cannot live up to them. Because you had ordered something to buy a certain volume, then you have certain payment conditions, and then you're assuming that it will sell easily, and then at the end of the day it doesn't, and then you have a cash flow problem. So the cash flow is often with the skin of the bear. If you assume it will sell, or if you assume that there will be a profitable business model, as long as we go in and we become the biggest, then you talk about the skin of the bear. This is also in combination, by the way, with another archetype that we're going to be talking about, and that's the winner takes all. That's this one, and that is that you keep investing and keep growing, because the whole concept here is if we become the biggest, we will become successful. And Amazon has proven that it can be done. Uber has proven that it can be done. But at the end of the day, the question is, okay, well, when do you get into a profitable business? Now, another one is the wrong pocket, and we're almost there. The wrong pocket is a archetype that is about selling to the wrong customer. For instance, in healthcare, if you would sell a system to a general physician, they would not have the benefits because they get paid per minute or per consult to a customer, a patient. But if you would sell it to an insurance company, they could save on the spending that they have to do on the general physician. So you should sell your product to the insurance companies and not to the general physician. So you're selling it to the wrong pocket. Then the Albert Einstein point, which is also a very interesting archetype, is the oversimplification archetype. It is either you make some things too complex and then no one understands it anymore, and then you should keep it simple, stupid, or you oversimplify it and then it no longer is valuable. So there's a question of you get the right level of complexity, and that is really something you should test for as an entrepreneur. A lot of companies have messed this up and therefore they failed. And that is how you should look at all these archetypes. Look at these archetypes. Okay, there's a lesson in it. We can learn from it. That's also why Paul Iske is studying failures, because he says we can learn a lot from failures. So what we learned from the Albert Einstein point is that we have to research the market and then specifically look at, can we further simplify it? Is it simple enough? It also connects to the right brain half. Is the user understanding the complexity of the tool? Can we make the interface simpler? But if we make it too simple, do we have all the information that we need to make it work? So that's the Einstein point. Then the elephant in the room is a very interesting one because it is connected also to the parable. I don't know if you're familiar, the blind man and the elephant, where one is holding the tusk and saying it's a spear. The other one is holding the legs and describing the elephant as a tree. And then the one is holding the tail, describing the elephant as a brush. One is getting air from the ears. Say, well, it's a fan. And they're all describing the elephant. And the idea here is that you need to understand the total context in which your user is using your product and service, and that's to understand the full elephant. So it's important to have all the information so that you can oversee the importance of what's missing and what's not. And sometimes it's a small detail, like a banana peel. It's something seamlessly small that at the end of the day is the thing that trips you, that makes you trip. It's something that you underestimate. It's an assumption that you stamped as not being risky, but it turned out to completely kill you at the end. There are some social media platforms that have been introduced in the past, like Yask, and this platform turned into a bullying platform, because they had made things anonymous. And because they made that anonymous, they thought people would share more, and it worked out, but they underestimated the opportunity with anonymity, that it also really facilitated bullying. And that is how a multi-million-dollar platform turned to shreds in just instances. Now, this is an example of some of the content that we would like to share with you in the Brilliance of Failure. And these are 16 archetypes that were established by Paul Iske by doing research on failures. And by understanding these archetypes, you can prevent them from happening because you start recognizing them early in the game. We also have another video knowledge clip that is about the 16 archetypes of failure that our own students have created from their learnings while they were in school as entrepreneurs. And this is something that you can also look at. Thanks for watching this one. Hope to see you in the next one.